to have a government shutdown. So in effect, the House would be funding government. They would just do that to try to provide an incentive to the Senate to move faster on the bills that they've already considered. That's the incentive. Another approach, Joe, would be simply to pass a continuing resolution through September 30th, 2024, and say that we're taking off the table a government shutdown and try to encourage the Senate to get their work done like that. We've passed 80% of spending here in the House. They've not yet completed their work in the Senate, but that's why we need this extra time.
Well, that's one matter that you're dealing with. Of course, we've talked as well, Congressman, about this supplemental budget request for Israel, for Ukraine. We've talked about attaching money for Taiwan and the border to that. That's actually the approach of the White House and the Senate. And it seems like that's being picked apart here in the House. At least that was the case for Israel money. Are you supporting the idea of bringing each of these to the floor separately, or will that be handled in conference and you'll have a very different looking bill that might include all of those matters? Because we're getting close to not only a government shutdown, but the idea of delaying money to Israel and Ukraine is making a lot of people nervous, Congressman, for a lot of good reasons.
Right. Well, of course, we passed nearly $4 billion of Israel defense spending over almost 5 weeks ago in the House. The Senate could have taken that bill up and passed it weeks ago, and we might not even be having this short-term concern about Israel. Last week, you're right, the House did pass the $14 billion request for Israel across the House floor. Strong vote, got 12 Democratic votes with it as well. And in the House, I think we'll get a bipartisan vote for support for our other allies, Ukraine and Taiwan. But there's no doubt that Republican members want to review that and make their recommendations on what that bill should contain. I was in a meeting for several hours this morning on that. So we are making progress here, and I know they are in the Senate as well. So I expect that we will have a bipartisan vote to support the effort by Ukraine to throw Putin out of their country and also to defend our ally, Taiwan.
Interesting, because, you know, we're hearing a slightly different tune from Chuck Schumer. He took to the floor this morning to say that this bill that Republicans in the House have put together tying Ukraine to border funding is a non-starter in the Senate. I know that there's a lot of tough talk, and sometimes it's not exactly related to a final product, Congressman, and you know there's a lot of posturing right now. But do you worry that, in fact, this is creating delays for both Israel and Ukraine?
Well, first of all, let's make sure we get the bill and the funding right to match the strategy of defending Taiwan against Chinese aggression, making sure Ukraine has the timely material they need to defeat Putin, and make sure Israel has timely stockpiles for their Iron Dome system and for their precision munitions. So let's get the substance right. Then we can get this timing issue right, but I'm convinced that if we focus on the substance, we'll get the timing correct. And to Senator Schumer's point, well, you've got Senator Jim Lankford of Oklahoma working actively over in the Senate on a border policy that they can get consensus on and get Democratic support for. So, look, I think it's very fluid in both houses. I think both houses are committed to the appropriate amount of funding to defend our allies and their efforts to thwart authoritarian attacks and terrorist attacks.
Do you think we're going to survive a government shutdown then? Or there could be a couple of days before something is figured out in the short term?
Look, I think that's a bad idea. We just don't need to do that. We should, in my view, and we didn't do it this week, but I urge that we adopt a continuing resolution and get one that 218 Republicans could support and get that done and through the House this week or very early next week, and it doesn't appear that's going to happen. And so once again, we move towards a deadline, but we need that sort of leadership, and that allows us to do the substantive work that we're elected to do in analyzing the right spending programs for all of fiscal 24 and to have the time to debate those supplemental appropriations that are critical for our allies.